It's 6:30 on September 15th, 2021, and I'd like to call to order the West End Neighborhood Council meeting. Welcome West End Neighborhood Council liaisons and West Enders. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Liz Whitefield, and this is Sherry Celine, and we're the co-chairs of the West End Neighborhood Council. And it looks like we have our board, Jean Kelly, Brian Depew, Kim Vasic is going to be joining us. Destiny Logan, are you here? Destiny's here. And who am I forgetting?
Maggie.
Maggie, I'm forgetting Maggie. Maggie, are you here? Maybe she's not here yet. With that, I'd like to make an order, I'd like to make a motion to accept the July WENC meeting minutes, this current agenda, and the new business items. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Wonderful. All in favor? Motion has been accepted. Thank you. So we have the treasurer's report. Brian, would you mind giving us the treasurer's report?
Sure. We actually have had no activity accepting bank fees since our last meeting. So I'll just make it short. We have a balance at the moment of $7,249.29.
Well, thank you for that. To move on to the new business, we have WENC board elections coming up in November, and we have some board seat openings. With this, I'd like to encourage folks on this call and to let friends know and whatnot that we do have board openings. And with that, I'd also like to announce, sadly, my resignation from the West End Neighborhood Council. Life circumstances are not giving me the time and attention I would like to give to this neighborhood council. And so I'm so sorry, but I'm gonna have to sadly leave the neighborhood council, but hopefully it will be for a temporary short amount of time, and hopefully I'll be back in the future. We'll see. But with that, we're looking for candidates to run for office in our December or November elections, and then also for the board. We'll have with me leaving, we'll have an odd number, which is beneficial, but we also would like more people on the board. So more active people. So if anyone's interested, please email us at wenc@we-tacoma.org. Or bring it up at a meeting. If anyone's interested, please put it in the chat, and we'd love to have you on the board.
Liz, I just want to say one thing as well. Our bylaws allow 2 business owners to be on the board as well that don't live in the neighborhood council boundaries. So, you know, I know the board needs to do some thinking about new members as well as anybody on the call. So you might know a business owner who's interested that we allow up to 2, and we don't have any now. Everybody on the board is living in the boundaries.
Yeah, when we have, you know, a vibrant 6th Ave too in the West End, and so I know you're saying it doesn't have to be in the West End, but we would like to encourage businesses in the West End, obviously.
No, what I'm saying is that you have to have the business in the West End, but you don't have to reside in the West End. So there's up to 2 board members that can do that.
I'm sorry, I see what you're saying. Yes, of course. Okay, so you can live somewhere else but own a business in the West End. That's good to know. And also part of our goals for this year was to increase diversity and encourage members from the BIPOC, BIPOC community to join us. And so we'd like to put that out there as well. Any questions or any comments? No? Okay, we're going to switch around our new business. So the agenda, we're going to go to number 4. So Tidy Up Tacoma 2021 starts the week of September 13th, which is this week. Sherry, do you want to add a little bit about Tidy Up Tacoma?
Well, it's a city-sponsored cleanup initiative. I'm very excited about it. So it'll be city workers coming into the various business districts. The West End will get tidied up in the 1st of November, maybe the last of October. Pearl Street at Ruston and 6th Avenue Business District. And I don't have the exact dates at my fingertips, but we come at towards the very end of this Tidy Up Tacoma. The North End is last. And we would also like to organize 2 small cleanups, one on the southern section of the West End and one down towards Pearl Street and Ruston Way. So our board needs to set a cleanup date later tonight or next week at our executive board meeting. So excited that there's going to be a second fall cleanup, city driven in our business districts.
That's great.
Any questions?
No.
Okay.
Now, Sherry, I can't see the chat on here. I'm sorry is there a way that we can see the chat? Okay,
Yes.
It doesn't look like anyone's
Okay.
chatting. Okay, but that's good. All right, well, it looks like we're ready for our,
No, we have to go back up to
our updates
the
from the
liaisons.
liaisons.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, you guys can can see that Sherry and I are together tonight. So I'm sorry for the little side conversations, but yes, we're ready for our liaisons.
All right, and we're going to start off tonight with Councilman John Hines, and he has a couple of issues, I think, that he's going to address.
There we go. Unmute myself. There we go. All right. Thank you very much. Great to be back at the West End Neighborhood Council. Still in the Zoom land, which is still great. Glad I can come drop by. Couple just a basic updates that Sherry talked about. Tidy Up Tacoma is coming around. The exact date for the West End for one is, I just was looking at it right here, is Rust and where's it? Tacoma Narrows, November 2nd will be when they're here. And then also the Gateways, which is on November 16th, will include the South 19th Jackson area, because there's the Gateway area, kind of that part of Tacoma. So there'll be two parts of it right there, kind of on the West End. For that, so that's kind of the one big thing I've been working on for a while. Trying to think other things that are happening on the council. We're talking about interim regulations, non-interim regulations for the Port of Tacoma is coming up here pretty soon. Home of Tacoma, which I think people want to ask questions about, so I'll get to that in a second and kind of talk about where that's landing. I'm working on some things with the multifamily tax exemption and when the council is going to return to in-person council meetings and setting up some metrics on that. So those are the 2 topics I've been working on most recently. So I'm more than one that I think Sherry, you want me to talk specifically about Home of Tacoma, which I can talk about where that's at right now. And then I can also just take questions for other people, specifically the issues around Western they have or they want to ask me about. So Home of Tacoma, which many of you, thank you all that have participated so far. What has happened, what's going on right now is that the Home of Tacoma was the proposal that came out of the Planning Commission, which was kind of the hybrid of the 2 models, right? So there were the two maps that were produced by the Planning Commission. They took public comment at the Planning Commission. They kind of melded those 2 maps together, and there was one map that came through, which was the one that has kind of the mid-scale, low scale, based on transit corridors and mixed-use centers. They went to the council. We had a public hearing back in July, and there was a lot of public comment about this. I heard from a lot of people in the West End that included me on their emails to the city clerk. I responded to pretty much all of them. And what has happened at this point in time is the Home of Tacoma is going to the Infrastructure Planning and Sustainability Committee of the council. So council has 4 committees that oversee different parts of council policy or areas of council responsibility. And so the Infrastructure Planning and Sustainability Committee is going to take on Home of Tacoma. They just finished up with non-interim regulations for the Port of Tacoma. So what does that mean for you folks that are really interested in Home of Tacoma? So it's going to go to that committee. Those 4 council members are going to work with the planning staff to take the proposal that came from the Planning Commission. The council made it very clear that there were some changes we wanted to see made. And some of my colleagues kind of expressed lots of different things they wanted to see before anything was put into place. So Home of Tacoma, as proposed from the Planning Commission, will go to that committee. their public meetings. They had a meeting last Wednesday. They're every other Wednesday is when that committee meets. And then there'll also be parts of the Home of Tacoma that's going to come back to council in our committees of the whole, which is not the study session and not the council meeting. They're kind of a separate meeting where we're all there together to talk about different pieces of it. I think the goal would be that something would come out of this by the end of the year. What that is still to be determined. Council members are still and staff are looking at what the proposal would look like, along with all of the trying to incorporate all the public feedback we've gotten so far. So I guess the takeaway from here for many of you would be, is if you still have thoughts about Home of Tacoma, and many of you still do, and I'm talking to many of you about it quite frequently. That's all that information is being passed on to staff, passed on to the council members doing that, and there's potential amendments. So Home of Tacoma we'll incorporate as much of that as possible before it comes back to council, and there'll be multiple times for you all to hear more about what council members are thinking, where we're at, and to provide public comment. So that's Home of Tacoma. So why don't I take any questions people have about Home of Tacoma before I move on to something else? Okay. And like I would say, like if I was to sum up the comments that I've heard about Home of Tacoma from people in the West End, I've heard lots of concerns about views, especially with the view sensitive district. I've heard things about traffic, parking, infrastructure around schools, infrastructure around the sewer and stormwater, power and water impacts. I think that's the big chunk of them. And so with that, those are all things that I've been talking to the staff about. We've been taking into consideration about what the final proposal will look like. Okay. So good question. So I'm looking at the chat, so I'll just kind of work my way through this. It says that you should want to. Good question, Nancy. I mean, if you could talk about the Baltimore, I mean, I'm more than happy to talk about Baltimore after I get to this piece with Home of Tacoma. Is council realizing that there has not been even one successful implementation of upzoning anywhere in the United States? We have looked at a lot of these other places across the country that have implemented upzoning and their different successes and failures. Those are all things we're taking into consideration. And when we're looking at this stuff, nothing has been done yet. And we are looking at those things. But the council has upzoned parts of our city in the past. And upzoning, not maybe citywide, has found success in other places. So we're looking at all those pieces to make sure that we're taking the time to make sure we make a decision that's going to be the best for the city of Tacoma. And then what was the next one down here? Yeah. And then so Sherry had asked, so Nancy, at this point, it'd be great to talk a little bit more about the Project Baltimore. And I know that there was a meeting with city staff, or city staff was at a meeting last night to talk about it.
So,
Nancy,
okay. Yes.
Thank you. Please go ask your question now, because I think it has a direct correlation to the traffic diversion due to development, and these are the consequences of development and how infrastructure relates to it. So I think now is a great time to ask your question.
Okay. Should I familiarize everybody with what's going on, or okay? So there is a Baltimore Street project whose purpose is to mitigate the traffic that's coming from Point Reston, and the concern of my neighbors and I is that this mitigation will redirect traffic right up Baltimore from 51st and Reston Way through our residential neighborhood, where we have already been overstressed from increasing traffic and speeding cars and drag racing. And so we are trying to find out how this project will mitigate our issues as well as those of Point Reston. And so we've talked to our neighbors and found that information that was given to them was spotty. Only a few people got the information that we got. And so we've we've gathered some support from our neighbors. We have a petition, which is about 200 at this point in time. We had a meeting last night with the construction man, or the developer and the planning department of Tacoma and all of our neighbors. And some of the things that we've learned is that one, most of our neighbors were unaware of the project, and that even though the goal of this project is to mitigate traffic down at Point Ruston, the bulk of the project involves beautifying the street. And we are at a point where we would like the city of Tacoma and the developer to step back and reconsider what this plan is, because the study for this plan was done in 2008, and based upon what was happening then, made predictions about what the needs would be in 2032, and their traffic diversions are not appropriate for what's going on with us right now. So I'm not sure if this is the venue from which we speak. We have other issues with them digging up soil that's still contaminated from our Sarco. And the other issue is that this contract is over 12 years long, and Tacoma has never had a contract this long. So the needs have changed over the course of time. And the story that we got last night was, well, a contract is a contract and we're bound by that contract. And we would like to take the politics out of that and work together as neighbors and our representatives to make it a win-win for everybody. And I think there are a couple of other people here who would like to make comments. Hello, friends.
So, all right. So I am Patricia Monroe, and I also live in that area. And everything Nancy said is exactly what we think and what's happened. We had a meeting last night, and it was really a passionate meeting. There was like 30 to 40 people there. And people, they were upset. And the city, they pretty much already had their decisions made. And they didn't really, they didn't really listen to us. So it's a problem and we need some answers.
Okay, John, any comments?
Yeah, no, I was not at the meeting last night, but I talked to city staff about the conversation with it. And it's just some background. I think they probably said this, right? So Point Ruston's this large development that's happened, down on the old Sarco smelter site. As part of that development, the developer was required through the environmental impact statement to mitigate some of the impacts of the growth that are happening there. Because it's such a large project, so similar to trying to think. So Skyline Elementary School, which is going to be being rebuilt in the West End, or Downing Elementary School, which is being rebuilt in the West End. The school district is being required to build curb, ramp, gutter, sidewalk all the way around the school and pave all the roads around the building. So as part of the impacts of the development, there's an agreement that's made between the developer and the city for them to mitigate the impacts that are identified at the time of development. The challenge with Point Ruston is it's so big, and the requirements of the environmental impact statement were so large, and Point Ruston started developing back in 2008. From my understanding, the environmental impact, they developed the mitigation, laid it out, and then it's phased in based on how many people have moved into Point Ruston. So Point Ruston, the developers have been doing mitigation around paving the streets, building roundabouts, doing all that stuff since 2008. This is the last, in my understanding, the last piece of that, which is the Baltimore street paving. And so that's kind of where it's running from back from 2008. There's lots of things that can be done to mitigate some of that stuff. Mitigate some of the traffic that's coming out of Baltimore. There's lots of things that could potentially be done. The developer, though, so as part of the impact statement, the developers and city agreed to what the mitigation was way back in 2008. And we can't go back and tell them, oh, that's not good enough now, right? Because we came to an agreement. So that's where the contract challenge comes in. So we can't, city go back and force them to what something we agreed to do more, right? You could imagine
they would do less, and we want less.
So you don't want it paved at all?
Well, the paving, that's not I mean, have you seen the plan?
Yeah.
Okay, so paving is great.
Yeah.
But to have it turn into this big, huge 3-lane bike lane in the middle, and that looks like maybe over by Mildred, and that's all commercial. So the plan they have doesn't slow down traffic, doesn't make it safer for our bike riders and our pedestrians. Sure, it's pretty, but and their only input from the neighborhood was in 2008.
Yes, but that's primarily based on the fact that the environmental impact statement was done in 2008, and this is phased in now 13 years later. So I guess there could be a different right now there's not a mechanism to go back onto that contract with the developer and make them do more.
It sounds like he's okay to, I mean, I don't get that. Like the city acts like that's like these requirements, and he acts like he'll do certain things. I mean, it's like I'm not sure who's in charge on that.
I did ask last night at the meeting, I asked both parties if they were open to modification if it doesn't exceed the amount of money that was agreed upon, and both parties said yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I guess that's my point, would be that I think there is some bounds within the total cost. I guess that's the issue would be assessing greater costs on top of something we've already agreed to. It would be the challenge. I could talk more to Steph about kind of where that's at and what potentially could be done. And I'm going to follow up with staff about what potentially we could do about maybe speeding cars, whether that's speed humps or something like that, to kind of slow some of that stuff down. Slow some of the traffic's down on that street.
That was the big issue. Everybody there had an issue with speed.
Yeah.
Not as much congestion, but as speed.
Yeah, and let me be honest, right? So that's my path that I go to Point Rust, and I live in the neighborhood kind of, and like that's how I go to Point Rust, is down Baltimore, right? And I've heard from neighbors all around that area that are already really concerned about the amount of traffic and the condition of the road surface, right? So I hope that, you know, this moves forward, we could include ways to mitigate some of that stuff.
Yeah. But so like when you
can I ask a question?
Just real quick, when you smooth the road, then they go faster. So.
Yes. But but at the same moment, I would say, like, I talked to lots of people in the city of Tacoma that don't like the condition of the roads. And so we are working to try to improve them. So we have to balance that a little bit. Jamie.
Let's hear from Jamie.
Yeah.
So I understand that there's this zero vision resolution. Yep. Has this project been reviewed under the zero vision resolution that Tacoma is doing? Sorry, my daughter popped in.
Has it been? Did they filter that through the Vision Zero? No, not that I know. If this Vision Zero got passed, was done earlier in 2020. But part of that component of Vision Zero is building out complete streets with sidewalks and bulb outs and traffic calming features, which when I looked at the plan, that is all included with it, right? So there's full sidewalks done on both sides. There's parking bulb outs that kind of narrow the roadway a little bit. So that should slow traffic down is one of the ideas behind that. So I think if we did run it through Vision Zero, I think it would come around pretty well, but that doesn't mean we can't do that. Maybe looking for, the the speed bumps, or speed humps, if that's part of looking at what that is, if that's the real concern, or making sure there's crosswalks are painted, or other things we could do.
So Mr. Hines, that's pretty much what we are requesting, that we take a step back and look at what the needs are now. What are the laws now? What are the expectations now, and see if that plan fits into that. And if it does not, then we need to fix that. So we are looking for that to be able to happen.
And neighborhood friendly. I mean, they asked in 2008. Those people don't even live there. Well, I do, but I mean, other ones don't live there anymore.
Yeah, so this is where it kind of is interesting, right? Because if the city was if the city was the one that was building the road and doing it, then we as a city have control over the timeline and things like that. This is being done by the developer, so their cost of development. And from what I understand last night, they said there were some potential delays with resources that are being there, and being able to get it done. So I'm gonna need to talk to staff about the contract and what kind of conversations we can have. I mean, as a city, we can always go back later after it's done and add in speed bumps. We can do additional pieces of it to kind of mitigate those concerns.
The other thing I didn't understand was they gave us data based on 2008. 2008 was like a recession. I mean, there was way less traffic, and all of a sudden they have this mammoth project, and they project it to now. I mean, all of it didn't really add up. So.
Well, I think I don't know how they generated the data. From my experience with the Proctor projects that I've looked at, or the James Center North project that's going on, they take the number of units and then they look at the potential number of car chips to be generated by it. So Point Ruston was very clear about the number of units that they were going to build. And so then you could generate how many car chips would come from each unit. So I would think they were projecting for the full amount of the full build out of Point Ruston, as how they generated the number. It wasn't based on how many car trips were coming out of Point Ruston when it was.
I understand that project.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Patricia and Nancy and Jamie. The West End Neighborhood Council would love to support you. So I'm sorry that we're just running in on a time limit here.
Yeah.
Our meeting.
Okay, so could you tell us what we should do next with you to continue?
Definitely. We would love to have your the points that you're making for more community support. We'd love to put it on our social media, on our webpage, and continue the discussion to see, hopefully to bring these points up to the city and to make them more known, to let your voices be heard.
Okay, so to whom do we direct any correspondence then?
Sure. So our email is WENC.
Nancy, you've been writing to us.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, that same email. Okay.
And then John knows that we support you. And I think there's a direct link here to things that we should be looking at with home in Tacoma as well, with traffic.
Okay.
And have the city, if you're talking about data from 2008 and how it's not current, and if the developers, showing their data, I think that the city should also have data, to come back and say, okay, well, maybe that's not relevant, or who knows who's cherry picking what. So we don't want the developers running our city, right? So,
right,
no.
and we don't want money to be used to do one thing when we're going to have to undo it to do something else. We would like to be as efficient as possible with our tax money.
And I think we're all on the same page.
Yes, but I just would frame that this is not being done with tax money, right?
I know, I realize that.
Yeah. So that is a whole another consideration. And then I don't know if I say this right, but we're having 7 blocks of city street paved with not a cost to any taxpayers, just due to the impacts from the development. So as we think about impacts of growth and development, I would ask people to kind of continue in mind that that's the kind of stuff we can ask for when development and growth happens.
Yes.
Is to make sure the development pays for the impacts.
Yeah.
That's good.
And I think that what our neighbors have in mind is going to be not as beautiful as was planned, but it's going to be safer than was planned.
So
So
narrower or like not, I mean, I guess I'm trying to understand because when I look at the plan, we could probably talk about this better
yeah,
offline.
let's
Whole
talk
Weston
about,
neighborhood has
because
to
I
come
know there's other agenda that needs to be handled, and I would really be happy for us to be able to talk to you, Mr. Hines.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sean, did you have a question for me?
Yeah, John, just a quick question. Do you know what the construction timeline is currently, assuming it went forward as planned now?
Yeah, I'm looking at the notes that I had, which is that basically that where is it at here? I'm looking at my notes here. But there was looking that it may start and could start. Is there point is there's no delay, there's delay of materials. It's going to be 6-month construction, possibly starting October, but due to COVID and Hurricane Ida, that may or may not happen on that timeline. But about 6-month construction could start as soon as mid-October. Getting dark.
Thank you for this venue. I really appreciate it. So we will get back to you and to Mr. Hines as well.
Thank you, Nancy, for bringing this to our
Thank you.
attention.
Thank you.
Okay. So going on to liaison reports, I'm going to start always with our police officer, so get her back on the street. So Anna Bra, the West End Council police officer.
Hello, thanks for having me. So I don't think I have anything as serious as that last one, but a couple things. The old Kmart building, I have a trespass order, a new one on file from them. So hopefully that can help get some of those transients out of there and moved along and get some resources in there for them. I also talked to them and they think that it should be knocked down, hopefully mid-November. So then we can just move on from that. Fingers crossed it stays on track. 6th Ave has been a concern now for about a month or so, maybe 2 months. With street racers, it's the after 2 o'clock bar close stuff. We're aware, we're working on it just for awareness. I know it's not the West End, but people go out of the West End. So it is Tacoma. Also, what else did I have? There's been some transient concerns around 6th and Skyline. Again, we're aware, we're working on that. We're getting resources in, trying to talk to them, see if we can help them to move them along to somewhere a little better off for them and get them out of the neighborhood. That's all I have.
On your comment on 6th Avenue, are you referring to the 6th Avenue in West End or up the street further?
No, further east.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, thank you for that update.
And I just have one question for Anna.
Yeah.
We have in the 13th and Harmon neighborhood, right off of 16, we've had an accident happen, right, where a little kid got hit on a bike, and then there's been speeding cars and then racing at all hours of the night. And so there's a problem where when residents call, by the time that police officers get to the site, they're gone and whatnot. Do you have any suggestions on how we can inform these residents to get in touch with the city or the police in terms of, you know, concerns?
Keep calling. That's what I'm going to say. Keep calling. We are stat-driven department. So if there's calls there, we can do it. I can also inform. Is it mostly like late at night? I understand there was a kid that hit, so that was probably during the day. But
that was during the day, and then we've had continuous late night racing where they're doing, you know, circles in the intersections and all that in neighborhood roads, not even on Jackson or, you know, we see tread marks all in our intersections. One right near Skyline and Frace, and then the other is Harmon and 13th.
Okay, what I can do is I can put those addresses on our request for additional patrols board. Can't make promises, but at least if it's in the back of their minds, maybe officers can go a different route to a call or something to try to get more presence in the area and just to be a little bit more well-known.
Okay.
But yeah, I will give it out to the patrol officers that work graveyard and see if they can work through there a little bit more.
Wonderful. Thank you. Officer.
Definitely, please keep calling.
Thank you.
All right, we have 2 new liaison officers this month joining the West End, and I'll go with Environmental Services Department, Christina Lorella. Are you here, Christina?
I think Christina's out this evening. I got a note from her saying that she was sick. So
Thank you, Sarah. All right, then our other new liaison is Pierce Transit, Nathan Bevel.
Bavel, yeah. Yep, Bavel. So, hey, it's good to meet everyone virtually. So, yeah, I'm the new liaison for Pierce Transit for this area. And so I'll kind of jump right into our updates. We're still hiring. We have, just like a lot of transportation industries across the country, we have a driver shortage. So if anyone is looking for a new career or knows of someone looking for a career change, please send them our way. Our recruiting team would love to have a chat with them. Other news from us. So last year we launched a micro transit program that we called Pierce Transit Runner, and we put that on hold due to the pandemic and low ridership. It operates pretty similar to Uber and Lyft, where it's a branded minivan that's fully accessible. And the service we launched last year picked people up from Tacoma Dome Station or our 10th and Commerce Station and took them to down Ruston Way. We recently relaunched that service, our Ruston Runner, on September 1st. We also launched a Tide Flats Runner, so providing microtransit access to the port and Tide Flats area. We rebranded our JBLM connector to JBLM Runner. So those runner services are up and going. We do have another pilot program that will be in the Parkland, Spanaway, Midland area sometime in the near future. Every year, Pierce Transit undergoes 2 service changes. Our service change we're getting ready to hit for fall 2021 will happen on September 19th. We want to make sure, and we've been doing some outreach to let our customers know, in years past, we've printed bus route books. We're not going to be doing that this year. So many changes happen after those books get in circulation that then we have a lot of customers that have misinformation on the routes. So we've taken a more digital approach. We've updated the route planner on our website. We've also partnered with the Transit app to provide real-time service and updates on routes for our customers. If we have customers that still need paper copies, they can call our customer service number and let them know what routes that they are looking for, and our customer service team will print those and mail them out to those customers. And then with the fair going on, we did launch the Transit Express to the State Fair. We had to cut back because of COVID on the number of locations where we're doing the pickups for that. And so pickups for that are only at the South Hill Mall in the Puyallup area. And the one thing that I really wanted to emphasize, I'm sure you've heard from my counterparts that were here before me, but we have a bus rapid transit project that we're currently in the middle of planning, and we are having our next live community open house for that event. That's going to be next Thursday, September 23rd, from 5 to 6:30 p.m. We will have live closed captioning and live Spanish interpretation for that event. And I'll post some information for that in the chat, as well as I'll be sending some information out to my contacts to share with the members of this group, either tomorrow or early next week.
Thank you so much. And it was nice meeting you, Nathan. Glad to have you on board. Let's go with Fred Ramey, Metro Parks, our biggest asset in the West End.
Hello. So this is my second meeting, and I feel like I'm a little more prepared this time. So you guys will have to let me know how I'm doing compared to previous Metro Parks reps. So I've got a couple updates. So the community centers, we've recently revamped our pricing and tried to focus that with what we gauged the community wanted and needed. So we're actually providing free access to all youth right now, 18 and under, at all Metro Parks community centers. And then really discounted rates for everybody else, ranging from like $5 to $25, depending upon depending upon their particular status. We're partnering with Tacoma Public Schools for a new program called Beyond the Bell. That's in all 35 elementary schools, and so the program is called, or the group running it's called Club Beyond, I believe. It's in all 35 elementary schools and 11 middle schools across Tacoma Public Schools. It's a pay what you choose program, ranging from $0 to $150 where people can contribute. And that is, we're able to do that because of a lot of the federal relief funds, philanthropy, and some other programs that are contributing to that. That's a single source program where you'd be able to register through Tacoma Public Schools. It's a family.tpsapps.org website where you can select from a wide range of after-school programs at all of those facilities happening between 3:30 and 6 p.m. And let's see, I've got a couple of capital project updates. Owen Beach project is progressing on schedule. I'm not sure what you guys have been, or what you've been briefed on the Owen Beach project in the past with other representatives. So actually, I'm not sure what you guys have been briefed on with any capital projects in the past.
Well,
and so if there's ever anything that you would like more information on.
Well, focus on the West End
I'm
part.
sorry, go ahead.
Focus on the West End.
Yeah, and that's what
Yeah.
And that's what I tried to do. So Owen Beach, I looked that up because I get the big briefing on all the projects, right? So I tried to focus it on just what was in the West End. And so Owen Beach is progressing on schedule. The Marina Complex in Point Defiance, they're looking at piling replacements in the near future. Fort Nisqually they're going into design for 3 new structures or improvements on structures, including a new volunteer center. And then the loop trail at Point Defiance will coincide with the reopening of Owen Beach to provide better, safer access throughout Point Defiance Park. That's where I'm actually an employee right now. We're going into a lot of strategic planning, and we're getting ready to launch a capital facilities master planning effort that'll help us figure out what the next 10 years looks like.
When is Owens Beach open?
I believe it's next summer. Give me just a moment. Okay.
No, that's all right.
Okay.
Next
we
time.
can look online. Thank you so much, Fred.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, no problem. And like I said, if there's ever any particular projects in the West End that you guys are interested in, I'm happy to go into an in-depth presentation. I manage personally all of the zoos and Northwest Treks projects, but everything else in the West End is a different project manager. I'm happy to get the information from them and present to you guys. I just need to know what you want to hear in detail about at one of these meetings, right?
Thank you for that specifics. Okay.
Thank you. We'll keep that in mind.
All righty. And the next we'll go with Mr. Gaines from TPU.
Hello, thank you so much. My name is John Gaines with Tacoma Public Utilities. I will put my email in the chat box, and I'm also going to place 4 links in the chat box, and one of those being on a grant that we received, and another one being on smart water and just how to save some bills, and then 2 more, one on bill assistance, and then on one on ways to pay in our lobby. And I'm going to talk about 2 of those links. The 2 that I chose to talk about is ways to pay. The good news is our lobby is open. I visited the utility quite frequently, and almost every time that I visited when the lobby was closed, I would see a senior citizen trying to get into the lobby because they were unaware that it was closed. And so please, please, please share with your neighbors, share with your friends, share on Facebook that our lobby is open by appointment. And I'm sure if someone came to the lobby and they did not have an appointment, we will find a way to serve them. And then outside of that, there's also several other ways to pay. And we've had several other ways to pay, whether that be online, at the grocery store, or pay boxes in different locations. I want to, I'm putting that link in the chat because I realize that a lot of folks just were not aware. I think for a majority of our folks, they thought that they had to come into the lobby to pay their bills. And so there's a population of folks that still believe that. So I just want to help spread that information. And then the second thing I would like to mention is our bill assistance program that we're operating through Pierce County. So two things about this program. One, there's a lot of money left to help folks, folks that are struggling to pay their rent and folks that are struggling to pay their utility bill. And we can't just go in and give credit to people's utility bill. They have to apply for these funds. And so this link that I'm putting into the chat, folks can find out more information about that. But I hope that you can all share it on your Facebooks. And then also we're going to have some more intentional outreach where I reach out to the neighborhood councils and different other organizations in the next couple of weeks, asking you all to just put this information in your newsletters, on your Facebooks, and just blast it out to email, because there's money there. There's a lot of folks that are behind on a utility bill, and we just would like to get them some support. And those are my updates. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to go with the fire department and then library. And Chris Brink. Okay.
Yes. Uh-oh, I just lost my notes. It went right behind the Zoom screen. Here we go. So this month is Disaster Preparedness Month. And I'll just go over this real quick, and then I'll tell those stories that happened today about what else, homeless encampments. But so September is Disaster Preparedness Month. The first week we want to focus on making a plan. Think about how you're going to contact your family, via Facebook Messenger, via someone out of state. Sometimes the cell phones don't work within the state, but if you call outside to a family member, then they can call back in. That's worked in the past during some major disasters. Next thing is build a kit. Think about some supplies that you may need for any kind of, that's going to get you through a power outage or anything. We've had a few of those recently in town here for a couple hours. I know of two in the last 2 shifts I've worked. 3, spend a little bit of money. Doesn't have to be a lot, but spend a little bit of money just kind of getting prepared for this. And then 4, teach your kids, how they can help you with this. And so getting to the homeless camp, Seattle's had quite a rash of fires in homeless camps. We had one today down at 74th and South Tacoma Way. And what's happening is they're just lighting garbage on fire, and then it's spreading to other stuff. And so they seem to want to get rid of all their garbage, and they think burning is the best way to go, and they kind of stack it all up, and they end up burning each other out of their own little homes that they have there. So yeah. So today was 3 or 4 cars that they had pulled in there that they're tearing apart, and a horse trailer that somebody's living in, and caught several trees on fire. So yeah, just be on the lookout for that stuff going on. So we've had quite a ordeal with those. Is there any questions?
So when you said they light their garbage on fire to get rid of it, it's because the downtown homeless have garbage removal. And I suppose the 74th Street and South Tacoma Way do not.
I didn't look like it, and there was a whole lot of car parts and tires there. I'm glad it didn't hit their tire pile, because that would have been a real mess for a while. Yeah, I talked to TPD about it, and figured it was stolen cars, and they ran all the VINs, they ran all the license plates, and nothing was reported stolen. So they don't know where the cars are coming from, but they're taking them out there and stripping them down, and they got a whole little community out there that's doing this. So.
Oh. Well, thank you so much for the update. We're going to go to library, and then Tony Pace with public schools.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle, and I'm a librarian at the Swayze branch of Tacoma Public Library. We are open normal hours, although most of our programs are still on Zoom. We have been having some children's programming outside. We did a craft outside yesterday, and we've been doing story time out on the lawn as well. So check the website for that. We have quite a few adult programs coming up that will be on Zoom. We have a program called Wicked Tacoma next Friday with Carl Stover. She'll be showing sharing a lot of pictures of historical pictures of Tacoma and some amazing stories of the past. And we also have just this Friday, this Saturday rather, we have an event about hiking, day hikes around Washington State that might be of interest to people. And also Poetry in the Park is ongoing. And that's a poetry sign installation at several of the parks around the area. I think the Audubon Park in UP is probably the closest one to the West End. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm interested in your historical piece. I think I'll take my husband, so thank you.
It is on Zoom, so be sure to check our website and register for that so we can send you the Zoom.
Even better. Thank you so much. And it'll be Theodore Richardson after Tony Pace. Thank you, Michelle. Is Tony, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tony Pace. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Tacoma Public Schools, and I have a very short presentation tonight because I know you guys are short on time. School opened September 8th for our grades 1 through 12, and kindergarten opened up September 13th, which is this last Monday. And we're so happy to see our little kids back in the schoolhouse and to be back as a family. So that's been great. I got a couple updates for the construction projects on the West End. Hunt Middle School opened on time. The Hunt staff have put the final touches in their classrooms, and they couldn't be more excited to welcome students back for the first day of school. Interior construction wrapped up in August, just in time for staff to move in. Landscaping and other improvements are still underway, but should be finished in September. If you want to see some pictures of behind the scenes kind of things with Hunt, you can visit the buildingforachievement.com website and take a virtual tour. For Downing Elementary School, recently the first floor exterior and interior walls have been erected, and work is being performed on the second floor of the new building. Floor joists are 90% complete, and workers have started installing the flooring deck in preparation for top slab pour. So again, you can go on our website and see pictures of the building being built and the progression. And that's all I have. That's all that's happened in the West End.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All
You're
right.
welcome.
And Theodore Richardson.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Ted.
Hi. Thanks, Sherry. So I was planning to do an update on Tidy Up Tacoma, but I figured you probably know as much as I do, Sherry, so I'll skip that. But as a compliment to Tidy Up Tacoma, I want to put in the chat the website that the city has for all of its different cleanup resources, ones that the city runs, but also ones that residents can access. So it's cityoftacoma/cleanup. And the one I specifically want to, I'll put it in the chat as well, but it'd be awesome if you could put it on your website. The one I specifically want to highlight is Call to Haul. It's a really cool program that is definitely underutilized. It's essentially a free dump run that you can access twice a year, and the city will come pick up any of the big bulky items that won't fit in your trash cans, or up to 15 small boxes. And so that's in this link that I'll provide. So you can access that twice a year. It's free. The city will come get your stuff and take it away for you. So I'll put that link in the chat. It has Call to Haul and other programs related to city cleanup.
So that's very good. And over time, I have promoted all the city's cleanups. So Call to Haul is underutilized. That's interesting to note.
Yeah, it's, yeah, I don't know why. I think the city could probably do a better job messaging it. So that's why I'm talking about it.
No, I'm not blaming the city on that. That's just people. I've certainly made people aware in the West End. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And I hope the city people hang around long enough when Sarah Norberg talks about the urban waters, because I want to bring up, and I hope John Hines is still on, doggy parks with the new high rises, because that is an urban water problem. So thank you. All right, you take it. Oh, I have one port comment, and that is, this was important. Leslie Barstow, and I'm not looking at my notes, from the port is absent. She's on vacation, but she did have a very good comment to share. And it's if you're reading the newspapers, you know, and that is, she said, do your Christmas shopping early, because the ports are backed up from Tacoma to, across the world and the nation, and the trains and all the traffic that all the truck traffic and the cargo cars. And so she said, get your, whatever you want, get done early, because this slowdown is real. And that was a good port tip this week. Okay, Liz.
Do we have Destiny Logan as part of our board? She is going to give us an update on the 6th and Orchard Thames site.
Hi, everybody. I'm Destiny. I'm part of the WENC board. So quick update. I won't take a whole lot of time. There is a new case manager. Her name is Ty. So she will be our kind of go-to when it comes to the Thames site on 6th and Orchard going forward. Currently, they have 60 occupants. They have 3 open units. And just remember, there's 40 units in this site. 6 people have moved out this month, which makes it a 60% positive move out rate. Let's see here. Sorry, I got to put my page. They do have a couple of donation needs. Of course, they accept all donations at any time, but specifically because the kids have gone back to school, they are in need of 12 to 15-year-old clothing for both boys and girls. There are a couple of upcoming work parties for the Thames. There's a Thames site at 60th and McKinley, which is moving over to 69th and Proctor, South Proctor. And there are a couple work parties to get that new site all set up. And actually today, the 15th, there were 22 houses moving from the McKinley site over to 69th South Proctor site. So 22 the houses that were at McKinley are actually moving over there like as we speak today. So that's pretty cool. And then I think that's about it. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, I would just say that clothing donations for the 12 to 15-year-olds, that's a great social media item that we should put on social media. I can do it on Nextdoor. Jean could tweet it out, but I think that is something that the community would, might be able to support.
Absolutely. Yeah. And share on your Facebook too.
Sounds good. Destiny, do you know if we have stuff to donate, do we just drop it by the Thames site, or how do we donate?
That's my understanding. So the Thames site is on 6th and Orchard. It's right by, I think it's First Life Christian Church. So you can either go to the church just outside and they'll be able to point you in the right direction. But yeah, you should just be able to stop by the site there on 6th and Orchard. And they do have full-time security. So a security officer will be able to guide you in the right direction as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Destiny. I appreciate your update.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay, well, now we get to move on to our guest speakers. So we have Stephen Atkinson with the City of Tacoma Planner. He's going to provide some background and history of the Narrows Mixed Use Center on 6th Ave. Stephen, thank you for joining us tonight.
Great. I'm Stephen Atkinson. Really appreciate the opportunity to come to the Neighborhood Council this evening. I just want to ask really quick as I get started for Sherry and Liz, if it's possible to share a presentation on screen.
Yes, Brian's in charge of that, but are you allowed to share? I mean, can you do it now? Press the screen.
No, it says it was disabled.
Oh.
Hang on a minute here.
Okay. So in the meantime, I'll just kind of give just a brief introduction. As I'm a city planner with City of Tacoma. I am in the city's long-range planning divisions. We have so the long-range planning side of the office and then current planning. So we deal with really thinking about projects like Home in Tacoma, long-term land use and housing policy at the city. We conduct area-wide zoning updates as well as comprehensive plan updates. And then we have the permit side of planning and development services that handles kind of the day-to-day permit activity, as well as providing support on development regulations. So all right, still waiting for that to come through. So I want to cover just a few things in the presentation tonight, and just being cognizant of kind of the discussion items that you have. I know you have another guest speaker after me. I'll try to be pretty concise. I want to take a few minutes just to highlight a little bit of history of kind of what our mixed-use centers are, some of the history of how they came into being and how they've changed over the last 20 to 30 years. And then talk a little bit about some of the particular history with the Narrows Neighborhood Center. And then I was asked to highlight a little bit the differences in development standards and development regulations between centers and areas that are not centers. And then at the end of the presentation, I can share this, have a number of embedded links for other resources or projects that you may be interested in. I'll talk a little bit about what those are. Those are kind of intended to help connect you to some of the resources we have online. So you can kind of start to build some of your awareness of kind of those tools and how to find out what kinds of development projects are happening in the city, kind of find out, what they mean and who to contact to get more information. And all right, it looks like I can share screen. So I'm going to try this. And hopefully you can see a map of the Tacoma Narrows Mixed Use Center. All right, and I can see a thumbs up. So that looks like success to me. So we're off to a good start. And then let's see. Oh, so I got to click on the screen and then my arrows will start working. So you don't need any more introduction from me. Stephen Atkinson, Long Range Planning. So the map here that you'll see is a map of all of our centers in the city. And we have 3 different types of mixed-use centers. So we have what we call regional growth centers, we have our Crossroads Centers, and then our neighborhood centers. So our regional growth centers, there are 2. One is the downtown, and the other is the Tacoma Mall. So these are areas in the city that are expected to take on and accommodate the highest levels of growth and development intensity in the city. So if we're thinking about kind of where is the city planning to grow and change and develop, and where is the city planning to sort of retain characteristics or retain open space or historic character, the downtown and Tacoma Mall are the 2 areas that should experience sort of the most growth and development over time. The Crossroads Centers are areas that are generally more of your kind of classic shopping center at the corner of 2 arterials. Generally very much more auto-oriented, kind of existing character and development patterns. And those are often areas that were identified as places where there's a lot of capacity for infill or redevelopment within those sort of traditional mid-century shopping centers. And then that comes to our neighborhood centers, and Tacoma Narrows is a neighborhood center. So these are areas that are often more kind of smaller districts, often along one sort of main street. Generally a little bit more historic character in these areas, often sort of predating some of our zoning. So many of our neighborhood centers were built along old streetcar stations, and often were sort of the early streetcar suburbs of the city before they were incorporated. So the centers have kind of a broad purpose within our comprehensive plan and our growth strategy. So the centers are expected to be areas, we talk about this a lot, it's sort of planner jargon, but being compact, complete, connected, and context sensitive. Compact in that these are areas that are often drawn with very tight boundaries where we're trying to focus growth and density within a very compact area. So we can start to get some of the benefits of that growth while still minimizing how much effect there is beyond the boundaries of those centers. They're expected to be complete neighborhoods or anchor complete neighborhoods where you have really opportunities to live, work, and play within a close distance of where you live. So these are areas that should have housing options, they should have services, employment opportunities, retail, shopping, grocery stores, the kinds of day-to-day things that you generally need, but have those characteristics within a short walk of your home. These are areas that are intended to be connected, multimodal connected. So you would have transit access, really kind of the highest priority for walkability within these areas. Often our trail connections. So if you look at things like the Scott Pearson Trail was one of our early ones. We have plans for what we call signature trails that would help connect these centers to downtown and to other centers. And then context sensitive is that, not, zoning, to be very forthright, is often a very universal goal. But we know that our centers are different. They have different characteristics. The cons for the neighborhoods around them are different. So again, a lot of the context for this is that these are intended to be somewhat more reflective of the communities that they're embedded in, and responsive to the areas around the centers as well. And that's from a design, a scale, and transition sort of standpoint. There's a long history to our centers. I probably won't go through every kind of wrinkle or kind of nuance of the timeline, but generally kind of going back in time, early 1990s, the state adopted the Growth Management Act, and that's largely now what we plan under. There was planning that occurred pre-Growth Management Act, so most jurisdictions had a general land use plan, some kind of planning, capital facilities programming, park plans that were being developed. But the Growth Management Act really put in place pretty consistent standards for content, as well as process and procedures that those plans had to go through. So there's a little more uniformity about how jurisdictions planned, and then how we plan for things that impact the jurisdictions around us. The other aspect of the Growth Management Act is it really then centered the concept of growth, that you have to plan to accommodate some degree of new housing growth or housing opportunities within your city. So shortly following that, the city developed our first comprehensive plan, and within that comprehensive plan designated our first mixed-use centers. The development standards followed between 1994 and 1997, where some of the zoning changes and development regulations were put in place to help implement those centers. And then not much happened. So between 1997 and 2007, there was not a lot of growth that happened in the city. So growth was happening very slowly. And so in 2007, we were asked by council to revisit our mixed-use centers and really say, what can we do to try to stimulate growth? We're supposed to be growing as part of our obligations under the State Growth Management Act, but the growth isn't actually occurring. It's not showing up in the city. So are there barriers in our development regulations? Are there things that we could do to really make it easier for that development to happen in the areas that we're planning for it and intending for that growth to happen? So in 2007, 3 new centers were created as part of that process: McKinley, 34th and Pacific, and then the Narrows Mixed Use Center. So these were ones that were created in 2007. And then in between 2007 and 2009, we went through another effort to look at our development standards. And that's when we went through the kind of the creation of the height bonus programs, enhanced design standards, reduced parking requirements, and then increased heights in our mixed use centers. So those were a number of the aspects of our zoning prior to 2009 that had been identified as some of the things that were standing in the way of development happening in these locations. And then again in 2014, so growth was still happening fairly slowly. In 2014, we went through another round of code revisions. And then in 2015, essentially conducted a performance evaluation, say, are there other kinds of investments we could be making to help stimulate growth? So not just from a zoning or land use change, but are there things that we could be spending our time, our money, our resources in proactively? And you can think about that as streetscape improvements, capital planning, things like that that could help make an area more ready for growth and also more resilient as that growth occurs. Now, there's 2 other things just to highlight kind of in the history, particularly to the Narrows Mixed Use Center. There's been a couple of other reviews that we've done in probably the last 5 or 6 years that were really, specific to this mixed use center. So in 2018, we had an application. Brown Bear Car Wash acquired, I believe, 3 parcels in the business district, and then applied for zoning changes to allow a car wash on that facility. And so I highlight this because on the one hand, I think it's a good illustration that if you go a little bit further east, down to like Highland Hills, you've got different zoning. And so a car wash at that location in what we call a C2 general commercial zoning would have been allowed outright. But in the NCX, which is the zoning district along 6th Avenue in the Narrows Mixed Use Center, things like car washes that are more auto-oriented uses are generally prohibited. Or they, in some circumstances, they're only allowed if they're part of a broader mixed use, and then they're not allowed on the street frontage along 6th Avenue. So in thinking about some of the differences in development standards, that's a really critical one. There's a lot more use restriction in a mixed use center. That ground floor is very important. The kinds of uses are much more specific that can be located there. And there's other uses that are more broadly prohibited. So what they wanted was a change to that zoning that would allow car washes in the NCX zoning district. That was denied by the city council at that time. The planning commission recommended not making those changes. The city council concurred. And that site was later purchased, and that's the site now of the proposed project for the apartment buildings in the district. So I know there's been some discussion around those apartments already, and I think some prior discussions over the SEPA review earlier this summer. So that's the same site. I believe it's these three parcels. If you can see my cursor on the screen. The second related review that we did in 2019, and this gets at a little bit of the relationship between our comprehensive plan and our zoning. We have in our comprehensive plan what's called a future land use map, and that kind of identifies pretty broad categories of land use. And it helps to control essentially what kinds of zoning districts someone can request for a specific piece of property. So if the comprehensive plan says an area is considered low density multifamily, then you can't just rezone that property to a high density zoning classification. It has to go through a comprehensive plan amendment. It has to go through a full legislative process. So that's one thing that kind of controls a zoning process. Is it how lengthy is that process? What kind of process do you have to go through? If the comprehensive plan supports that zoning change, it might be an easier rezoning process. If the comprehensive plan does not support a requested zoning change, then it often has to go through a much longer and fuller legislative process. And those are open processes. There's also been circumstances where councils can either grant the change or rezone it to something completely different that wasn't requested by the applicant, but that the council thinks that are within the context of the neighborhood. So a legislative process is a pretty open decision-making process for the city council. So in 2019, one of the things that we were trying to address really over multiple years was where we had made decisions as part of our comprehensive plan about zoning and what these land uses should be, but had not actually put those zoning districts in place. And so what happens is you had folks that lived in a neighborhood like along North Howard Street, and that area between Skyline and Mildred, where you have single family zoning, it's R2 zoning, but the comprehensive plan said that area should be low density multifamily. And so as long as the comprehensive plan says it should be low density multifamily, someone could request a rezone for their property, their site, if they bought it, and have that rezone potentially to accommodate a low density multifamily development. So in 2019, we're going through this process of trying to reconcile where we had conflicts of what the comprehensive plan said the zoning should be and what the zoning actually was. And this was an area where there's a lot of community participation around the Narrows mixed use center in that neighborhood around North Howard and Skyline. But ultimately what came out of that was really a recommendation to just sort of hold off on any decision. And so this is an area where we still have today a comprehensive plan and a zoning code that don't necessarily agree about what the appropriate zoning or land use should be in that area. So those are the two kind of the most recent sort of zoning discussions that we've had around the Narrows Mixed Use Center. And then I wanted to just highlight really quick, and I'm trying to keep an eye on the time, so I'll probably ask Sherry or Liz, if I'm taking too long, go ahead and give me the 5 minutes. Okay. So kind of broadly, so I'll probably just kind of go through this pretty quickly then and get to some of the next presentation elements. But when we think about a mixed use center from a policy standpoint, these are areas, you'll hear planners talk about 20-minute neighborhoods. And I apologize for throwing out lots of different terms. But the idea of a 15-minute or 20-minute neighborhood is that there are areas that have a lot of different, like I said, you can fulfill a lot of your needs, your day-to-day needs within a short walk from home. And so there's a lot of elements within the Narrows Mixed Use Center and the surrounding areas that provide a good foundation for that. And then our comprehensive plan identifies kind of long-term, what are some of the other elements that could be built out to better support that 20-minute neighborhood concept. So for Narrows Mixed Use Center, the comprehensive plan talks about creating a trail connection from 6th Avenue to Scott Pearson, enhancing pedestrian facilities on 6th Avenue, including the walk area in the neighborhoods around it to make sure we have complete sidewalks, curb ramps, and crosswalks to make it easier to actually walk from the neighborhoods to the business district. It identifies 6th Avenue as a possible high-frequency, high-intensity transit route, and identifies specific bike facilities in the neighborhood surrounding it, connecting it to different destinations, whether on the shoreline at Titlow, to downtown, or other mixed-use centers. And then I was asked, as part of the presentation, just to highlight, some of the development standards for the mixed-use center compared a little bit to some of our other districts. So I think, just kind of taking a step back and really looking at, the sort of the Highland Hills where you have general commercial zoning, and then the Narrows mixed-use center where you have X-district zoning, mixed-use zoning. There's some key differences between those two. So I mentioned mixed-use center districts tend to be more restrictive on uses. The general commercial generally have fewer use restrictions. Building height in NCX is 65 feet. It's 45 feet in the C2 general commercial. There's different building design standards where general commercial districts generally do not have much in the way of building design or site development standards. Our mixed-use center districts have much more regulation on sort of building design, and that is everything from how much transparency you have to have on your street facades, where your entrances need to be located, modulation and massing standards, things like that. The parking requirements are very different between the two. So in our general commercial districts, we have minimum parking requirements for most uses. In our mixed use districts, if you're on sort of those core pedestrian streets like 6th Avenue, often there are no parking, minimum parking requirements in these areas. And then within the district, off those key streets, often reduced parking requirements or bonus programs to reduce the amount of parking that's required. And then one of the key differences when we sort of experience a classic sort of older business district versus one of our shopping centers, within Highland Hills, you'll see like most of the buildings are set very far back from the street. There's all the parking is concentrated really from the street to the building frontage. So if you're thinking about a pedestrian walking in that environment, which I'm sure some of you have done or many of you do, a lot more driveways to worry about as you kind of walk down the street. So you've got to pay attention a lot more because every business has a driveway. So mixed use centers try to consolidate the number of driveways so you don't have to worry as much about the frequency of kind of looking over your shoulder. The mixed use centers require things really to be set up closer to the street. No parking is allowed really between 6th Avenue and the new businesses. So you'll see a pretty significant shift in where those buildings are located on site compared to somewhere that's not a mixed use center. So those are some of the, the things that will really shape a very different kind of built environment over time between Narrows Mixed Use Center and even just the areas right down the street from it. And I mentioned in the beginning, this is kind of just my wrap up. There's a number of related projects I want to highlight that are ongoing that I want to make sure you're aware of. So you can kind of help participate or advocate for things that you feel strongly about that you think would be a benefit for Narrows Mixed Use Center. One is our urban design studio. So this is a project to essentially create a new design manual as well as a design review board that would kind of prioritize, at least initially, projects within mixed-use centers. And that's really to help make sure that we're getting the kind of build quality that we want and the design quality. And those are things that can be really tricky to mandate through zoning codes, which are more universal. And so this is an opportunity to be a little bit more flexible, but also have more oversight of how that building design occurs and how the building fits into the context in which it's located. There's no link for our neighborhood planning program, because that's really just something that is just now starting kind of underway of being defined and created. And it's something that will be kind of picking up more steam over the next couple of years. But this is a program that's really going to be more focused on smaller areas. So areas like just looking at the Narrows Mixed Use Center or the McKinley Mixed Use Center, and not just a land use update, but really thinking about how we coordinate capital investments and things like it could be infrastructure upgrades within in areas. So rather than looking at infrastructure and street trees and landscaping or stormwater infrastructure on just a site-by-site basis, this would be an opportunity to coordinate more of an area-wide kind of action plan for these areas. Obviously, home in Tacoma, you had discussions about earlier. And then under community resources, I just want to highlight in particular there's some questions about kind of where do we find out about projects, kind of what's coming down the pipeline. The permit dashboard is one link here that I would suggest. I would almost recommend a whole training just on how to use that dashboard. But that will tell you kind of where we're having pre-application meetings, things that are in the permit process, what kinds of permits, but there's a lot of data. So you can zoom in on the area that you're interested in, and you can sort by time frame and permit type. So it's great because there's lots of data, but because there's lots of different ways to sort it, it does take some training or just kind of someone to help walk through what it all means. But that's one of the best sources for information on permits, and then being able to link then to the staff and the permit applications. And then the other one is a subscription service online for land use notices. We can go through and identify like which types of actions at the city that you'd like to get notifications of. So I get an email, I think every Sunday, that identifies any new land use permits that have been applied for during that week. So again, lots of really good resources, really happy to come out another time if there's interest in really kind of diving into some of those. And so, with that, I will kind of end my presentation. And then I'm happy to kind of close my screen. And then if there's any questions or discussion, happy to answer what I can.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephen. It's definitely a lot of information, and we'll hopefully take advantage of those community resources. I know we have questions. I think Sherry has a question. Start with her.
Was there any community questions before I have mine? Brian?
Brian needs to unmute.
Actually, something happened on the chat, so they're all the chat messages are direct to me. And Janet Ivanko had a question for Stephen. What building design options could be considered for the 6th Avenue area to enhance the appearance of the development projected to occur on 6th Avenue?
Yeah, so I guess so one is there are opportunities through the permit process to provide comments, but those are often, like right now, really structured on the impacts of the project. So you've probably had discussions like, I think the one in Narrows Mixed Use Center has already gone through sort of the SEPA review. So kind of as I understand, there have been some conversations around that. So that's generally a process focused on those impacts. What we're looking at through the design review program is more on some of the aesthetic context. And so that can start to get into things like window treatments, roof lines. There's a lot of different design elements. Now, largely also focused on, like we know that how buildings transition from, tall and dense to single family can also be a really tricky transition, especially when you have pretty sharp zoning changes from a zone that allows high density to a zone that doesn't. So one is part of the Home in Tacoma conversation has been, is there a land use way through zoning that we can address some of those transitions? And then second, through the design reviews, kind of to start looking at some of those elements that can help mitigate or moderate those impacts. There's a lot of different building design elements. I hesitate to use words like, aesthetically, like it's going to be beautiful, because we all have a different idea subjectively of what those things mean. But there are opportunities to look at the different design elements of a building, and through that design review process, to then look at ways that we could influence that and encourage more community input into that design process. Now, that's not a program that is up and running. So it's a proposal that we're putting together that the city council would have to fund and adopt and staff on an ongoing way. So I bring that one up because if that's something important for you, then I'd encourage you all to participate in that as that starts to move forward again and then moves on to the city council.
Okay, we have a question in the chat box, but I'm going to go first. And that is just in a nutshell, I have three things. The first one is, when is the construction going to start on the 6th Avenue 7-story apartment building?
That I do not know offhand, but I'd be happy to find that out for you.
Okay.
What the timeline looks like.
And then the Kmart building, can you just speak, just briefly for a moment on the Kmart building? And when I know that our police officer mentioned the transients, which I thought were off that property because it's been fenced up. Can you tell us when that project's going to begin? And also the parking on both properties. They do have plenty of parking, correct?
So the project, I don't know the numbers for the Kmart facility or the Kmart proposal. The one in Narrows Mixed Use Center, that has, I believe, somewhere in the ballpark of 130 some parking spaces, but around 200 units.
Okay.
Proposed for that project.
But there's no start date yet.
Yes, those are both still in permitting.
Okay.
So both projects are still in permitting. The Kmart facility, I believe in the next couple of weeks, we should expect the SEPA to get issued for that. So that will be the next kind of step in that process, is that they'll be conducting the preliminary determination and the SEPA review. And then there's an opportunity to comment on that. So again, that'll be focused on evaluating the potential impacts and mitigation measures associated with that project.
Okay. Here's an issue that I've come across just in my own, being a volunteer in the West End, having doing stuff with trash litter and dog poop. I came up with an idea, and then I hear from my South Side counterparts and other neighborhood councils that my idea, the problem is I'm right on. When you build these high rises, and if pets are allowed, are there dog parks on site? And there is a glaring example that I do believe your planning department knows about on the south side of town with Grand Pacific.
Southeast.
And there's dogs allowed in the building, but dogs aren't allowed on the property. So the people have been taking their dogs to the public right away, and they don't pick up after their dogs because we don't have a good anti-dog waste, anti-litter program in the Tacoma.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's an interesting issue. Yeah, so I had not heard that before. Okay. But those are the kinds of things I think are I think great to hear from community groups where you're seeing things like that. And I think after this presentation, you've got folks from environmental services talking about the urban watersheds. And that's another connection where we work with them frequently in project review. We're starting to think about, like, if we're seeing patterns of different kinds of impacts, how can we address that through our land use? Is that something that we can address in project review or potentially coordinate with environmental services on as well? Hey.
I am going to follow up with this. So which planner, and I see Peter Huffman's zeroed in, and I know there was a planner, I was given the name today, that dealt with that South Side issue. And then I'm also a park volunteer, so I see the same dog waste problem in our public parks, and it's chronic. Most people do pick up, but some don't. Now you're going to add higher density to our neighborhoods, so you're increasing the dog waste in not only in the community, but also in our parks. So I want to see something in the future with dog sites and some little education. So what planner would I email and when I make an email on this, besides Urban Waters, which I've already shared my concern with?
Well, if I may, so first of all, Shirley Schultz, who's come to this group, would be somebody that you can share that concern with, but obviously Steve, we can also coordinate with Metro Parks regarding dog parks. But the concept of having dog parks on site for private development, it's not prohibited. In fact, some of the projects that you see down on the Foss Waterway in the Stadium District, they have dog parks on the roof and on the property. So this particular property owner, probably it's an interesting, like Steve said, an interesting issue for someone to choose on their private property, their private development, to not allow dogs on the property, but allow dogs in the units. So, but dogs, having a dog facility on a development is not prohibited by the land use code. And many of the high-rise developments that you see in downtown do have dog facilities on site, on the rooftops, actually.
I totally understand, and I've seen the ones on Foss Waterway, and that's higher economic, and they have it done very well. But now I want to see it across Tacoma, because I want to see equity in it, because that is our waterways and it affects all of our water. So it needs to be not just in certain sections of Tacoma, but across Tacoma. And I'm also going to see Josh Jorgensen of Tacoma Housing Authority, because I brought this up to him about James Center North, and that was kind of news to him. But if apartments allow dogs, they need to have some sort of doggy park for doggy waste. Anyway, okay. With that, you'll be hearing me on that. And there's a question in the chat box, and that was, I said, Stephen Atkinson, did you respond to Patricia Monroe about the zoning changes on 46th Street?
No, sorry, I'm just opening up the chat to see.
And Cindy B has one too.
Okay.
And after that, I'd like to ask a question.
Okay.
Yes, I'm trying to recall. So what do they decide for zoning changes on North 46th Street? Is that up on North 46th and Pearl? I mean, again, I'd have to look up that specific project, but I'd be happy to do that and provide a report back to the neighborhood council.
Okay, and we can forward it to a contact with those neighbors. Or that person should actually send me an email, so I have her question in email. Okay.
You can take them to chat.
And then Cindy B, once she had 3 volunteer planning commissions who understood that increasing supply does not lead to affordability. Is this a question for you? Are there any paid planning members who understand that the trickle-down theory of housing supply doesn't lead to affordability? Do you see that question?
Yeah, and so it looks like there's kind of 2 parts to that. And I'd say I think a lot of these are questions that are really being grappled with as part of the Home in Tacoma project. And so at the end of the day, that's a council decision around whether, what types of housing they want to, allow within the city, where they want to allow those housing types, but also what kinds of design standards come along with that. So if you can duplex, there's different ways of regulating how a duplex can be built or constructed on site, how it can be oriented to the street. So that is the part of the conversation, I think, around Home in Tacoma, is that low density and then mid-scale housing, where that should apply, and then appropriate design standards. And my understanding on that is, we're still at the policy conversation. There's still a second phase that would come along after that would be looking more at the specifics of those design requirements that would come along with any of those zoning changes. So again, I think that's the area where I think I'd be focusing on those questions around what those duplex standards might look like, where they might be permitted within that Home in Tacoma project. Let's see. And I guess what I can say though is that part of that is being guided by policies that have been adopted by our council. So they do support and have supported in the past policies about supporting more housing choice within the city. And our policies don't necessarily determine exactly how or where that shows up as development or translates into zoning changes, but there has been broad support for providing for more low density and mid-scale housing options. And so now that's kind of what Home in Tacoma is looking at in more details, really how to translate that across into our growth strategy. Sorry, I'm going to read this last paragraph here. And I guess, you know, this is a question kind of getting at housing supply and affordability and the relationship between housing supply and affordability. And again, that's something that we've been trying to look at from a data standpoint to get a better understanding. And it has been, you know, part of that work as well is, you know, part of what drives up housing costs is constraints on supply. But we got to be careful when we talk about affordability about what are we talking about. So there's a lot of examples of, you know, within a neighborhood that housing types by their own nature can be, you know, offer different price points for entry into a market. So single family detached houses tend to be more expensive than townhouses. You can often have 4 townhouses in the space that would be occupied by 1 single family detached housing unit. It doesn't necessarily mean that those 4 townhouses are going to be affordable per like federal affordability requirements. But that's part of what, again, what we're grappling with from a policy standpoint and then implementation is sort of what are those benefits? How well does that supply translate across to affordability? And how do we ensure affordability across different income groups, you know, throughout the city? So deep affordability, where you're talking about, you know, 30% area median income, 80%, you know, and likewise. So we've got a lot of different areas of housing need, and we're trying to align how we can better serve those different areas of housing need within the city.
Thank you, Stephen. Now we have a question from Brian, and then JD Evans has a question as well. Brian?
I was wondering, this kind of goes back to the 6th Avenue, the Narrows business district, and that 7-story apartment house. And I don't know if that is modeled after, if that's supposed to have retail on the bottom floor, or if that's part of that plan. But if it was, it occurs to me that unless they were to build a parking garage, there'd be no place to park. In fact, one of the things that keeps that little area from being kind of walkable neighborhood is the fact that you have 6th Avenue in 4 lanes, and then it chokes down to 2 lanes at MacArthur Street. Has there ever been any discussion or thought about reducing 6th Avenue to 2 lanes, say from Mildred to MacArthur, and just have it go all the way down to Jackson like that? And give some room for bike lanes, give some room for side parking for retail, and actually help to grow that as a actual walkable, livable neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd say that there has been thought given to it, but really no decisions made about that. And it's always complicated when we're dealing with kind of, you know, what we call road diets, or, you know, shrinking those travel lanes, really considering, you know, there's some benefits to that in terms of kind of slowing traffic, creating more public realm for the kinds of amenities that can make an area really attractive to walk and shop. You know, there's other trade-offs that can come along with that. And so long term, I think, you know, part of it is kind of recognizing in our transportation master plan that there are some design conversations that probably need to happen on 6th Avenue, and thinking about it as more of a corridor and how you kind of consider traffic flow and walkability and bikeability along the whole corridor. And so that's also been part of the conversation, is not thinking about it as one segment, but how does that, if you make significant changes, how does that then interact with other areas along that corridor? So I think those are some like design studies that have been identified. I believe 6th Avenue is one of those on the list of, you know, there's transit priority, there's a lot of pedestrian priority on 6th Avenue. There's a lot of competing priorities. And so what our transportation master plan has identified is really a need to look at that streetscape, that corridor design, to try to balance how we meet those different needs. And then we recognize, right, what happens in the street interacts with how we design and build next to it. And so that's the other piece of that puzzle, is making sure our standards and zoning kind of align with what the vision is for the right of way itself. And so that's a conversation that's been kind of had, but again, it's contingent on, you know, likely some potential funding and prioritization to kind of move that conversation along.
Thank you, Stephen. How about JD Evans? Do you have a question for Stephen quickly?
Yes, my name is JD Evans. I'm a retired builder developer from Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm concerned about the Baltimore Street project. I understand from this meeting that they could start construction the middle of October, and that's only a month away. And I think, to be fair to the developer, we ought to make sure that he knows that we don't want him to start until Nancy and the rest of the people from the neighborhood come back to you with a revised plan.
Yeah, and I'm happy to kind of communicate that. So I'll just say I want to make sure I've got though that I think some of my notes from your comment on Baltimore, as well as some of the requests from private development sites, I'll kind of go back and I can coordinate with our permit staff who are kind of responsible for those projects or overseeing those projects to make sure that we're getting you some, transmitting those comments, but also getting you some of that information that you want on those. So I just wanted to say, I'm not as current tonight on some of the current happenings on some of those projects. So happy to kind of get back up to speed and get you that information.
Can you guarantee that they won't start construction the middle of October?
I can't make any guarantees on that.
Well, I think we ought to do that if you all want to have a revised plan that the neighborhood wants to have.
Steve, do you have a good route of information that this Baltimore and 46 community should take in terms of them not being pleased with what the developing company is planned? Do you have a course of action or any advice to give these community members?
I think I can jump in there if you may. Yeah, so there was a meeting last night as previously shared. And so I think what we will do is be sure to get you the contact information there. There's multiple contacts. It's obviously in the design phase, which is a public works conversation. They're the ones who build the streets, but it's also part of the Point Ruston environmental impact statement mitigation that, as Councilmember Hines pointed out, has been in place for some time. So there's a component of that for sure. So we will be sure to get you information through Ted and myself on how to funnel those comments and the process for that, if there is an opportunity to redesign the street. So not going to make any guarantees on that, but there does seem to be an opportunity to have some conversation about tweaking the design that's currently in place. And so we'll make sure we get you contacts and schedule and information on that. Certainly.
Do you mind leaving that contact information in the chat box so the community members in that area can have that contact information to send their questions?
Yeah, I don't have the exact contact right now with me, but certainly through Ted, we'll get that to you all tomorrow.
Can I leave you my email address and you can send that to me?
You can certainly, yep.
Okay, I will send it in the chat box. Thank you.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Ted.
All right.
Ted Richardson.
Oh, Ted, Ted has a question?
Oh, just making sure that you all know that I heard that and that I'll be the one communicating everything back to you.
Oh, I didn't know
Thank you.
that.
Okay.
Yay, Ted. All right. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you so much, Steve, for this information. I'm sorry, was someone else trying to talk?
Bruce.
Can I ask one last question about, so planning, long-term planning? I mean, I know nothing about it, but I just listened to your presentation, and I've lived in Tacoma a long time. And I've always been curious about, so how do they take into account the single family, middle income homeowner when they think about all of this other progress or whatever? And then also just like traffic, how come it seems like there's a lot of growth and traffic seems to get worse and there doesn't feel like that's the infrastructure that's looked at first?
Yeah, so certainly. So just on the, so on your first question, so two parts. So on the first, with regard to single family residential, so traditionally a lot of our long range planning, and the reason why you will see like centers like Narrows that are very, there's not a lot of depth to the zoning. So generally the high density, much like Proctor, much like McKinley, what you'll see is that high density zoning is often structured very narrowly along the commercial business district. The part of the historic effort was really kind of minimize how much change or development was occurring in single family residential areas. There's a lot of priority given to those neighborhoods. And part of what that meant was really restricting or narrowing down and where you could construct high density. And so that's part of this conversation around home in Tacoma, is how much flexibility to expand sort of beyond areas where that high density, where our mixed use centers have been constructed and planned for in the past. With regard to traffic and parking and things like that, I mean, there have been over time, I think, decisions made, policy decisions and implementation to really say, you know, as a city, we need to grow and we need to expand. We are a designated metropolitan city in this region. We're expected to have significant population growth here. And to do so around transit, to help facilitate more transit ridership, get more cars potentially off the street, but also a sense of, you know, there is an acknowledgement within that there is going to be more impact. There is going to be more traffic. Parking will get harder to find, and an acknowledgement and acceptance of that to some degree within our planning. But again, yeah, sorry, Peter.
Well, just if I may, I'm in the spirit of time. So that's a very complex and detailed question. And just for everybody on the call knows that I'm, you know, Peter Huffman, I'm the Director of Planning Development Services. I've been with this city for almost 30 years. And so that time frame that Steve laid out there going back to 1993, which is when I basically started at the city, we would love to come, and because there's a lot of questions and a lot of deep information there, we would love to come back to this group and share with you whatever information you would like to talk about. There's probably multiple conversations regarding planning that goes back to about 1990 to present, regarding traffic, regarding everything all the way down to dog parks, which is a new issue that has come up tonight. And so we would love to come back to you and talk to you about all of those issues. But I think since it's 8:16, probably not going to get there tonight. So I will work with the chair. I will work with you guys and figure out, and Ted, and figure out how to coordinate that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Peter. And thank you, Stephen, for the presentation and answering all the questions. We now have our second guest speaker. Thank you so much for holding on, Sarah. We really appreciate it. And we're very interested in hearing about you. So I'd like to present Sarah Norberg. She's with the City of Tacoma's Environmental Services, and she's speaking about our watershed tonight.
Yeah, so I'm going to speak about two things. And if I can also have access to sharing the screen, that would be great. So I'm going to talk about stormwater as well as our new watershed management plan. And I can give you a quick update also on the Grand Pacific, because I've been coordinating with the property managers there. So they reached out to me, or I worked with Source Control, and I'm going to be working with them. They're totally on board with installing, I think, there might be up to 3 dog waste stations there. So the property managers already ordered a couple, but they've had a string of mishaps with their maintenance individuals. Either one, I guess one had a heart attack, and then the person that came in to take over quit suddenly. So I'm going to help facilitate having those installed, as well as if there's a space or need for one of ours provided by the city, we'll have that installed as well. So they are working on it. Going to have, I'm not sure about the associated bins. I did just recently put in an order for new dog waste stations, and I've ordered a couple of bins to try it out with sponsors to see if they'll be willing to actually dispose of the bins as well. So I can offer them a bin if they're willing to manage it, which they seem completely amenable to. So that's what's going on with that. And I'm going to be, I just reached out, talked to her today, and we'll be pushing that forward as quickly as we can. So to go on to other stormwater stuff, go ahead and share my screen. Share. Okay, so talking about stormwater and our watershed. So one of the, hopefully everybody here knows that our wastewater and stormwater systems are separated. Let me turn off my video so I don't, well, maybe I can't now. Yes, I can, so I don't stretch things out too much. that our wastewater and stormwater are separated here in the city of Tacoma. So unfortunately, about 50% of our population doesn't realize that. They think that all of our stormwater goes to the same place, our wastewater treatment facilities, and is treated before it's released to Puget Sound, or the Foss Waterway or Commencement Bay. So we are trying desperately to educate the public about that. Because as you know, stormwater is a huge source of pollutants, because as it travels over hard surfaces like your lawn, driveways, streets, it picks up any pollution that's there, car oil, brake dust. One of the new particles that's found in tire wear particles, the 6-ppd quinone, which has a direct link to salmon mortality, are all things that get picked up by stormwater and then deposited straight into our lakes and streams and rivers, and then ultimately straight out to Puget Sound. So the Environmental Services Department is responsible for managing stormwater, basically, for the city. So we are owners and operators of a National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit that's issued to us by Ecology. And we actually opt into this permit. It sets a higher standard of things that of compliance that we have to achieve as a city. And again, we've opted into that to help preserve and continue to protect the cleanup efforts that have taken place around the Foss Waterway. Because if you've, it may not look like it, but I've lived here my whole life and remember the times when the Foss was a polluted, disgusting mess and you would never go down there to walk around. So I'm really happy to see it's cleaned up and we're working to keep it that way. So on to our urban watershed plan. So we are developing a watershed plan, and the purpose behind this is basically, as Tacoma faces challenges of responding to climate change and achieving equitable outcomes, what we want to do with stormwater can make a difference for our health, safety, and quality of life and environment in our future. So this Steve's stuff with the long-term planning is using this urban watershed management plan in concert with some of the other related environmental plans to achieve shared goals so that we can also have community benefits. So what we're trying to do with the start of this management plan is to engage the community and our residential neighborhoods and business districts so that we can get community input to help us be more strategic in locating stormwater actions and projects in the most important areas to build a more healthy and resilient Tacoma. So examples of information we're looking for are, issues with pet waste. Is your neighborhood experiencing issues with pet waste? Or do you not have safe streets to, walk, ride, or roll on? So what we really want to do is coordinate this watershed approach so that we're not just only looking at water quality and habitat needs, but also future development, housing needs, climate impacts, community priorities, and equitable service. So what we have available now going on is our Healthy Watersheds online survey. And I'll put these links in the chat when I'm done speaking. Christina, if Christina was here, she would have been dropping these in for me. But there's an online survey at www.tacomaurbanwatersheds.com. And I believe got it up here. So if you can still see that, you can go to this Get Involved button. And it'll take you to where you can click on Take the Survey. And it is going to be asking you, it's anonymous, but it'll be asking you for information on things in your neighborhood, what you'd like to see, challenges you're experiencing, and these are things associated with stormwater infrastructure primarily. There's also going to be 2 online community workshops. So the first one is Saturday, September 25th from 1 to 2:30, and you can sign up on this website. And the next one is Tuesday, September 28th from 5 to 6:30. And if you can't attend any of these, they will be recorded and put up on the website to be viewed later. So this is, this information, we're trying to collect as much data from the community as possible, because this is really going to help inform how we do our work and help us do our work better and in more strategic fashion. So now I'm going to move on. I'm trying to be quick here because I know it's late to some of our current stormwater opportunities, stewardship opportunities. And these are all programs that I personally manage. So that we have so many, and you can go to the www.cityoftacoma.org/prevent stormwater pollution, and you can learn about all these programs. We have storm drain stencil marking or catch basin marking. If you've seen those oval discs that say, you know, the Puget Sound, we can coordinate, like if your neighborhood wants to have your catch basins marked, we can arrange for that to happen. We've been working with Oscar's Enemies and going out as they're doing their litter pickups to mark the drains along their routes. So that's, and we're also trying to launch this stencil art, which brings me into the next program, the Adopt a Drain program, which is just starting now. So I'm really excited about the Adopt a Drain. It's a national program and it's taking off in Western Washington. A bunch of cities are joining in on this effort. And you can go online to adoptadrain.org and find your catch basins in your neighborhood and adopt them, and basically sign up to and make a commitment to keep them clean. So it's like sweep up, rake up, pick up, and you get, so for example, this is a yard sign, one of the yard signs that you'll get as a welcome packet. So you can, you know, hopefully inspire your neighbors to participate. And then I will be providing some tools, like a little, basically a pooper scooper and rake, and some safety gear to help people, you know, keeping their drains clear. And this is also a good time to plug that we're probably going to get like 2 inches of rain this weekend. So if you have the opportunity, clean up your catch basins while you can, so we prevent any flooding for this first big rain flush. The next, you know, program that we've talked about already are the neighborhood dog waste stations. So again, you can go online, put in an application. If you're a property owner or have permission of the property owner, we will provide a bag station that's basically on like a metal T-post. And we provide the bags. All we ask that you do are make sure that the stations get refilled, or let us know if there's anything, you know, wrong with it or got hit by a car or something, which happens unfortunately. But yeah, it's free and it's a great program. Like I said, I'm going to try out some trash cans attached to the posts to see if I can get sponsors on board with that, because it is a bit of it's going to be an extra work. You know, instead of refilling a station every 2 months, you're probably emptying a trash bin every week. But I'll see how that goes. The next opportunity is Make a Splash grants. So please spread this one around. I have no applicants right now, so I'm going to extend my deadline until the end of October. But the Make a Splash grants are small grants. They are a reimbursed grant of up to $4,000. They are meant to fund projects that have a relation or direct tie into stormwater pollution prevention, like message. So it could be a K through 12 program, a field trip. We've had projects that look at, you know, experimental biofiltration for filtering stormwater out of like Wapato Lake. You know, as long as it has a stormwater based message, you know, you put your project in. It could be a rain garden, it could be depaving a traffic ring and having it planted. So all of these things can apply. And then I'll have a couple other grants to talk about too. And then of course, Tacoma First 311, you know, the city residents are our eyes on the street, right? It's like our source control department can't catch every spill. So if you see anything basically other than clean stormwater going down a catch basin in your neighborhood, oil, paint, excessive muddy runoff, we encourage you to call 311 and report it. If there's an actual spills and report spills box for 311. And that way our source control people can get out and investigate it and hopefully stop it. So these are some other programs that I don't directly manage, but work with these individuals. So Tacoma Tree Foundation, there's a couple of options for getting street trees or trees on your property. There's the discount tree coupon. So that offers you, I think it runs from October to March. It gives you $30 off each tree. And I forget how many coupons you can get per person, but still trees are expensive. It's great to get $30 off. Pierce Conservation District has their annual sale where they have their native plants and trees. Grit City Trees is a neighborhood program, but also for individuals. We're really trying to get street trees out. So if you have room in a parking strip out in front of your house, so between the sidewalk and the street, and you have room for a tree, this is your program. It's completely free. We have an urban forester on staff. They will come out, they will look at the space, they will help you figure out what tree is best for that space, and then deliver it and help install it, help plant it. So these are typically evergreen trees, but that's, they're meant to eventually provide shade, which helps bring down heat islands and just in general beautify the neighborhood. So we have more grant options here. So the Rain Garden Assistant Program. Now this goes over to Pierce Conservation District. They are like the Rain Garden Center extraordinaire. If you think that your yard or space in the city is a good candidate for a rain garden, you can work with Pierce Conservation District. They'll come out, help evaluate your yard area, see if it's a good candidate. And then if you decide to go forward with it, they can help you with plant selection and design, everything from start to finish. And they offer a small stormwater grant. And that grant can be used for, it's also $4,000. Unlike the Make a Splash, which I'm trying to change, it is not a reimbursement. So you can get that money up front instead of having to come up with $4,000. And it can pay for labor. So $4,000 to go towards the labor of, the construction of rain barrels, rain catchment, rain garden development, design, and implementation. So it's pretty cool. The other thing we can use small grants for is this DPAVE program. So we work with PCD again for if there's areas, whether it's in front of your house, like a parking strip that is covered in cement and you want that removed. You can go to the DPAVE program. Our solid waste and field crew works with providing a dumpster to dispose of asphalt and cutting up the concrete to get it out. We provide free tag row for plants. And then there's always the option of low cost plants through Pierce Conservation District. We also have nursery at the city. And then with any funds from a small grant program, you can pretty much cover one of these projects. And this picture was a much larger project that occurred in McKinley. But yes, we want to get rid of the concrete, unnecessary concrete. And the last one again is another plug for the Pierce Conservation District grant, like the small stormwater grant, is also getting rid of turf grass. I personally hate turf grass. I want to get rid of all of it in my yard. I've managed to do it in the backyard and plant clover, and I'm working on a pollinator garden in the front. And it's absolutely beautiful. It's true. If you build it, they will come. I now have hummingbirds, honeybees, butterflies, everything showing up in my yard, and it's fantastic. So if that's something you want to do, is get rid of your unsightly brown turf grass, you could apply for a small grant loan, and PCD will help you with design and plant selection, and it's a pretty awesome program. So I'll stop sharing my screen. That's all I've got. I will quickly.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's such good information. It's really nice to see what the city's doing and where. I think she shut her screen off.
I can try and I can do it again. There we go.
Nice. Does anyone have it? Oh, do you have a question for Sarah?
Well, anybody? I'll have the audience before I start talking. Anybody from the audience with a question for Sarah from Urban Waters? Sarah, I want to work with you outside of this. So at another time with getting the messaging out, especially on the first part of your program, the dog stations. And I know my neighborhood, although I don't have much hope for it, there are many people that have paved in their planting strip. But I would like to get some of your information out, and I would like to work with you, an appointment Monday through Friday, and work with you on some of these projects. And by the way, I had been broadcasting the adopted drain. And if I'm not mistaken, on Sunday, it was 0 people. And have you looked?
I have not looked yet today.
Oh, and so now, and I'm a little confused on adopted drain. I don't know if we're looking at all of Washington's numbers, but then, because I get 2 different sets of numbers depending on which page I look. But one, I think for Tacoma's, we were at like at 6:30 tonight, 21 people adopted, 37 drains since Sunday, because we put it out on Nextdoor. I've told friends, and I put it on Litter Free 253 Facebook page.
Awesome. I have to get my butt moving. I've got like stickers to make and tools to hand out.
I would adopt 2 tonight.
Oh, so we're even up by tonight. So I want to, and one of the other numbers I saw, but it could have been maybe including Seattle, was 36 adopters and 52 drains. So I want you to explain those numbers to me so I know who it is, because that's a good way to refresh my page to get more people to see it, to get more adopters.
Yeah. So like I said, we're collaborating with a bunch of different cities. City of Seattle is a big one. And so they created, so this is a group based out of like Minnesota at Hamline University, and it just caught off like wildfire. So they designed this app, and then we got hold of it over here, and all these cities have started to join in. And so they created our own Washington webpage because we have so many cities joining in. And so now I'm not sure how I'll have to ask that at my next working meeting, because we're still developing this, and we are the first to launch. So Seattle's not officially launching until October 1st. That's when the big launch is.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Common numbers, and I've just rise just in the last 3 days.
Yeah. So I believe that is just Tacoma numbers, which is awesome.
Okay. So I'll be in contact with you about many of these issues.
Yes. And I'm going to plug a bunch of stuff in the chat, but you can contact me for anything. If anybody has any questions, I can get you information, get you links, whatever's needed. So.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. That was a great presentation. Any other community questions for Sarah or for our board in general?
Any people interested in running for a seat on the board? You have a couple of months to decide.
Here we go. November is our next election. Well, thank you everyone for staying on with this late. I think we had a lot of important issues and questions, and hopefully forward steps. Just like to thank everyone for joining us tonight, and thank our presenters and our liaisons for staying with us. Thank you so much, and thank you to our board.
Thank you for being there.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Look forward to seeing you next month.
Okay, good night.
Thanks.
Meeting is ended. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye, JD.
I'm gonna let Brian do
Yes.
that.
So
And Sarah, I will be in contact.
does the chat save when you
The chat will save separately. Bye, Sarah. Thank you so much.
but it will save when I save the
Yes, it'll save because you're running the meeting. And so it saves in a different file. Actually, the chat saves in a like a basic file, just like a text file. And then it saves in another like more comprehensive file. So it saves to your computer. I think once you end the meeting totally, then everything will pop up. And so in your downloads folder, you'll have all that.
Okay. So I guess.
Brian, you did a great job
You did.
tonight running it. Oh my goodness.
Good job, Brian.
Do you have any questions? Not that I can answer them, but Liz.
I kind of wonder about that, about why it defaulted to direct message so much on me. But I kind of got that fixed.
That's just what it does because you're running the meeting. You have the WENC. So if you want, what you can do.
Well, I made a direct message, and of course, then at the bottom of me, it's always a direct message to that person until I change it back to everybody, and which I did. But
if you
for
want,
Nancy, it just kept showing up as a direct message. So maybe it was that way on hers, and she didn't change it.
I see. But I was going to say, if you want, do you know how to change your name on your?
Yeah.
Okay, because if you change your name to yourself, I mean, it depends on how you want to structure everything. So, I mean, if you want to designate one person at the meeting to say, okay, all private concerns or whatever, direct message Brian, or you can keep it WENC Tacoma and just.
Well, I direct message her because I was just trying to recruit her to run, or somebody from her neighborhood. It'd be nice, be nice to get somebody from that end of the West End.
Nice. Oh, totally.
You had somebody question.
No, Nancy.
Yeah, I recruited Nancy to run for the board, and I asked her if she wasn't interested, which I don't think she is, to try to find someone in her neighborhood that shared some of these concerns.
Definitely.
Try to step up to the board. I explained to her that you can strengthen the board by bringing these problems to the board's attention and making those a part of what the board does. And the board and the council can help you by amplifying your message.
That's awesome.
Kind of a win-win. So I put it to her that way, and I think she's intrigued by that. So she's going to look for somebody. But
good.
Oh, good, good, good. Oh, that's wonderful news.
That, and then the West Slope, because the same thing.
The West Slope. I'm working on the West Slope.
Yeah, get a few people from there, but I want somebody from the up from the north end of the West End.
Woman that's still on with us right now, Jamie, with the little toddler. I think she's from that area.
We have Sean, but I'd like to see us.
Sean's from our part of the West End.
I thought he was down more towards the.
No,
he's a neighbor with Kim.
He's somewhere around Kim's neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's there.
All right. Well, I'll.
Okay, it went long, but we just had a lot of liaisons and we didn't meet in August.
I know.
So I will work on that. Take a rain check if you have nothing to report, but everybody had skipped a month.
I know.
And I guess Pierce County, a few new liaisons went longer, probably because they haven't ever had my short email about keep it short.
A long time on the whole planning thing and the question.
That went. Okay, now we're private. Yes,
You
the
stopped
planner.
recording, right, Brian?
The planner had too many extra.
Did you stop recording?
I haven't stopped recording.
You can stop recording now.
Okay, yeah, I guess I could stop recording.